Tonight, we got real news. This just in.
Real news from the Blaze.
Welcome, everybody, to Real News. The controversy surrounding the comments of Senate candidate Todd Akin has now become, well, impossible to dismiss. Not the actual words themselves, mind you, but what the media and now the Democratic Party seems to be doing with them. Will Kane, I know you feel strongly about this.
Well, you know, I like how you set that up, actually, when you said it's become impossible to dismiss, because I think one of the charges we have here at Real News is we often look for stories that aren't getting enough attention. And this Todd Akin story certainly doesn't qualify as something that fits that description. It's gotten plenty of description. It's fair to say that the mainstream media is hyperventilating over this story. So why would we at Real News feel there's something more for us to add here? And I think the answer for that, for at least me, is the debate is not being done a service. It's being done a massive disservice. Now, I wanted to have this conversation. I talked about it earlier today with the producers, and I thought, I almost want to have it with you guys. I want it to be a conversation among friendlies. And there's a reason for that. It's because the conversation is so charged with emotion. And even here, even amongst guys at this table, I know there's disagreement on this issue. Among the producers and cameramen and all the people around us, we run the risk of offending people in this conversation. This is the nature of a conversation over debate. But I think at this point we have to have it because there is a goal to be had in this conversation, and it is to deconstruct what has become a completely and utterly muddled issue. Not just abortion, but this particular one dealing with Todd Akin. I think I can show you an example of that with a clip from the mainstream media. Let's try one out.
How do you square this? Mitt Romney said he would allow abortions in cases of rape. How does he square that with the party's platform?
Yeah, you're right. This might be the most important point of contention today. In the wake of those Todd Akin comments about legitimate rape and abortion, Mitt Romney and his running mate Paul Ryan, who was an ally on issues like this with Todd Akin in the House, Romney came out and said that under a Romney presidential administration, they would allow exceptions for rape.
See, what's going on here is the Todd Akin comment has become, I don't know the appropriate metaphor, but some kind of umbrella bucket to swoop up every single debate, or at least most of them dealing with the abortion issue. And I want to take Todd Akin's statement for a moment and just separate it into three separate areas. Please, guys, I want this to be a discussion. Jump in, talk to me, because I want to sort this out. First of all, let's say this. Todd Akin used the term legitimate rape. It's my personal contention that the word legitimate and the word rape should not come within 1,000 yards of each other in any kind of conversation that I can imagine. And he has been roundly condemned, Essie, you pointed this out in a column, from everywhere from National Review to Mitch McConnell from the conservative side. I've found no one to
Family
defend.
Research Council has been defending him, but beyond them, it has been a comprehensive critique and denouncing of Todd Akin
from
all spectrums on the right.
That's because it's not just a poor choice of words. It's he's making a claim to medical authority within this idea that goes well beyond anything that he had the right to.
But that's the next step, Ben. So there's this concept, this word choice, this grouping he put together of the word legitimate next to rape. That's one thing. The second is his venture into biological research and that women somehow have hormonal secretions that prevent pregnancy when it comes to violent intercourse and, yes, self-abort. It's nonsense. And apparently, you can venture into the interwebs and find people who have written about this maybe once every decade and say there's some larger story here than Todd Akin. But it's junk science and has almost, again, been largely condemned.
Yes.
Leading us to the third thing, and this is the one that's controversial in a legitimate debate, and that is, what are the appropriate exceptions for someone who is pro-life? When someone says they are opposed to abortion, are exceptions for rape and incest or life to the mother? How do those exceptions play into the abortion debate? And first and foremost, can we please separate that debate from the nonsense that Todd Akin sputtered? Because right now, Todd Akin's statements are being used to make that position wholeheartedly crazy and unworthy of debate.
Well, and that has been, that's been my issue with this story from the beginning. One, he's a problem because the abortion and right to life issue is so important, and this guy is completely muddying it up. And two, my issue with his comments have nothing to do with abortion. I don't mind his disdain for abortion. I share it.
Right.
I mind him being an idiot. I mind him using junk science to inform platform and policy decisions he is suggesting he would make. And how shockingly incurious this gentleman seems to be. That's what I mind. So the abortion issue is completely separate.
Right.
And that has been the most offensive part of this, that the media has decided this is about abortion and this is about all Republicans.
Right.
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, what we see, though, over and over with the media, and I think that this case with Mr. Akin is similar, is the media and then the Democratic party's attempt to create guilt by association.
Right.
So we saw this when some radio show host had a Christmas jingle about Barack Obama. Every single Republican politician had to weigh in on it and had to denounce him and had to distance themselves from him. In this case, the party officials have, and yet it's still not good enough until this man apparently is drummed out of the party and sent into obscurity.
No, that won't be enough either. We'll talk about that.
Well, he should be drummed out of the party.
I think it's clear that they got really tired of talking about Medicare because it's really dry and they don't really understand it and they don't really want to cover it. So the media,
the media loves social issues.
They absolutely love this stuff and they love to come back. And within hours, they had adopted Team Obama's frame for how to frame this issue, which is that Todd Akin represents not just something.
Todd Akin.
Yeah, not just Todd Akin, but that his making those comments have changed fundamentally the way that we perceive Paul Ryan, the way that we perceive Mitt Romney.
So we have
Mitt
to
Romney is completely moderate on this issue. He's been on both sides of this issue. If anything, the next pro-life justice that he appoints will be the first pro-life.
But Ben,
justice.
the tie is Paul Ryan, right? This is the debate. This is the narrative that's being forwarded, and we have to discuss this aspect of this story, because the implication is that, say, Paul Ryan, his stance on abortion is somehow tied to Todd Akin's not stance but statement regarding rape.
You're right. That's the distinction, not the stance, but the statement.
That's right.
Akin has said that he said it was a mistake. He just also refuses now to drop out of the race. So even he admits that this was an incredible.
Well, he
dumb thing
admits
to
the
say.
word choice was bad.
Right,
He's wrong.
And it's
not
more than
enough.
that. It's junk science on
Yes.
top of that. So let's venture into this realm of the controversial aspect of abortion. So my personal opinion on abortion, my personal position on abortion is that I am pro-life. I'm opposed to abortion. I'm opposed to abortion in all instances save life of the mother. That my position is that life begins at conception. I arrive at this position not from a religious orientation, but from a logical one. I don't see how you can distinguish essentially a 1-minute-old child from an 8-month pregnant woman with child, and then on down the line. Conception is the only bright line in the process. But I am therefore in the minority. If you believe life begins at conception, it's only logical that that life, no matter how it's conceived, should be protected. Liberty is the first thing we protect. When we talk about life, liberty, life, is the first thing we protect. But let me put up a poll to show you where Americans stand on pro-life versus pro-choice today, first of all. The country is moving to be more pro-life. You can see there's almost a 9-point disparity at this point. Pro-choice headed down. But when you say what I just said, that you would also take away exceptions for rape and incest, it looks like this. Only 22% share my opinion that that should be illegal as well. So what we have seen, blatantly, by the way, from people like Jennifer Granholm, was to tie what is, yes, a controversial policy opinion to what is a crazy statement from a man in Missouri.
Well, I think partly, too, why his statement was so explosive and so offensive to so many people is, at least for pro-choicers, pro-lifers are supposed to be Neanderthals. I don't agree with that, but that's how they're stereotyped. Then you have Todd Akin, who has this Neanderthal medieval view of even conception at rape. I mean, to me, it almost sounded like, witchcraft.
Right.
Like, what does he think? He's going to give a woman herbs and a poultice?
Conservatives are always forced to defend this issue or defend their position at the extremes. And I have to say that I worry because, politically right now, Democrats recognize that women are part of their base. And I have to say, it was amazing to me that Barack Obama was able to get away with being one of the only people that voted against the Born Alive Infants Protection Act when he was a state senator in Illinois.
And
one of the most extreme pieces of legislation we have ever seen.
It was partially authored by my advisor in college, Hadley Archie. I knew the whole thing. I was sort of behind the scenes with them talking about it. And when it came up, it was 98-0 in the Senate. All it said was that if a baby is not successfully aborted during the procedure,
you are allowed to save
it is allowed to save it.
Right.
And Archie said this should be a simple thing. Barack Obama voted against that. And the fact that he was able to
and has not really
skate
been
on
held
that
on
issue in front of the media is astounding. And so while, Will, I mean, you're taking this from a position of principle, I feel like we're always defending this, you know, at the 99th percentile. Meanwhile, on the other side, I mean, that is appalling.
I'm sorry, Ben, there's two reasons for that, Buck, is because the debate has been lost as far as what the initial ground is. It's over women's rights and reproductive rights. That's the ground from which this debate is conducted. It's never conducted from the position of, but is this a life? It's the only question that matters in this debate. Is it a life? There's only two logically consistent positions. That is that you cannot abort a life no matter how it's conceived, or some lives are okay to extinguish. Those are the only two logical positions, in my mind, in this debate.
I think that the thing we need to remember about the situation is that the extremes that you're talking about are the current law. I mean, you talk about taking away the different exceptions and only 22%
Right.
supporting it. The reality today is that we're on the other side of that, thanks to the court.
But as conservatives,
there is no way to actually have any restriction currently, which is why we need to send this matter back to the states, so that states can make the decision for themselves about what kinds of exemptions they want to put in there.
You need Roe to be overturned, and you know,
Exactly.
people would say,
But that's what it would do.
Most pro-lifers that I speak to, Will, and you know, you said yourself that you're in the minority as a pro-life person pushing it as far as you do, but when it comes to the matter of principle, you are correct.
Well, and actually,
it's a question though of should you try to save more? Should you try to save more babies than, you know,
You make
trying
a great
to be
political
trying to
argument.
be
You're right.
persistent?
I'm arguing from
and, you know,
a position
and I
of
would say,
principle right now.
you know,
Right.
And Will, I'll tell you, I share your position entirely at this table. In all cases, except for life of the mother, I'm with you 100%. And I think it's interesting and worth sharing. My dad explained this to me one day. He said, you know, just ask someone why they would potentially want or need an abortion. And they'll say, maybe I don't want the responsibility of having a child. Well, inherent in that statement is the admission that you are valuing what is about to happen. What is about to happen to you when you get pregnant has value, has life, has the potential for you to have to be responsible for it. That admission is acknowledging that life has value at conception because you're already thinking about it.
My little sister Florence, was adopted through DC Social Services many years ago by my family. She was left on a park bench in Washington, and I can't envision a world without her in it. And the reality is that when you extinguish a life, you really wipe out the world as it would have been with that person.
Absolutely.
That, to me, is something that we have to question. You know, are we willing to condemn these children of something that's so horrible to death based on nothing that they did, based only on the sins
Well,
of
and
the
the real tragedy is that groups like Planned Parenthood, for example, which perform over 300,000 abortions a year, last year by their own numbers, 900 plus, just over 900 adoption referrals. That's
Well,
a tragedy.
think coming back to the beginning of the conversation, what gets so frustrating in the way that the media discusses this is that they don't acknowledge that on this question, as you showed in the polling, America is a pro-life country.
There is no acknowledgement.
And I happen to be pro-choice. I don't share these views, but I think we can respect one another and not caricature one another.
And that's what I condemn the mainstream media for, is not recognizing this legitimate date, tying it to a crazy man in Missouri. That's what I have a problem with. But after the break, a grim milestone reached for a reluctant president. We'll speak of the author of Leading from Behind, Richard Miniter, next.